Welcome, everyone. This is the final webinar where we are going to present our results from the work that we have been doing in the past years in the WalNUT project. I see some familiar faces, so some of you know what WalNUT is about. Today, we are going to present a document that required a lot of effort in the past couple of years. Is the white paper on the bio-based fertilizers. We have with us our two speakers, Isabel from Itasil and Gabriella from Icons. I'm from Icons as well, and I will be facilitating this webinar. We also have two brilliant panelists with us today, and you will meet them later. I will be sharing my screen, and you will see a presentation. I hope you can see it. Yes, wonderful. And this is the agenda. We will have first a keynote presentation on the white paper key messages by Isabel. Then we will present you the recommendation that we have been developing in the past couple of years and that are presented in the document. We will have a panel discussion with our two guests, and then we will conclude and we'll tell you where you can find the document. Now, I will leave the floor to my colleague Isabel on the objectives and key messages of the WalNUT white paper. Isabel, please, the floor is yours. You are on mute. Let's give her a minute to see if she can unmute herself.
So, hello everyone. My name is Isabel González García. Thank you very much for being here. I will be presenting the webinar organized by Icons for the WalNUT project. And I am an environmental engineer and a researcher at the Agrarian and Technological Institute of Castilla y León in Spain, and a partner of the WalNUT project. We are leading the task 6.2, which is policy recommendations for regulatory market and user acceptance of bio-based fertilizers from wastewaters. And our main role in this task is the creation of a white paper for the project, which is what we are going to present to you now. So, this is a webinar all about this white paper of the WalNUT project, but first of all, I would like to address some questions that we consider fundamental. The first one would be why bio-based fertilizers topic matters now, and also what the WalNUT project has been done so far, and why a white paper is a right output. So to answer the first question, as you may know, agricultural fertilization is key for ensuring food security, and in the European Union, we are at a critical point. Because despite the significant contribution of organic fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers, mineral fertilizers, remain essential for crop production. These synthetic fertilizers present high environmental footprint, but even more importantly, we depend on external sources to obtain them. Nitrogen is generated through the Haber-Bosch process, which uses natural gas, and the phosphate rock for obtaining phosphorus does not exist in the European Union. Therefore, with unstable geopolitical context like ours, the one we have right now, the external dependence makes the European Union vulnerable. So this means that it is time to address how to obtain nutrients from waste valorization, therefore with the use of bio-based fertilizers. What did the WalNUT project in this sense? Well, bio-based fertilizers are positioned as a practical circular economy lever They are extracted from waste streams, in many cases, and they may help close the nutrient loops and also reduce emissions. So the WalNUT project has been working in that line, and we can highlight the proposal of a definition, official definition for the bio-based fertilizers that we will describe later. And also the project has analyzed the barriers of the bio-based fertilizers, legal, commercial, and so on, and also explored the nutrient flow and its deficiencies within the European Union, and studied the application of 12 different nutrient recovery technologies in 5 different pilot plants across Europe. So why a white paper is a right output for the project? Well, a white paper we think is a right output because it can work essentially as a bridge. It turns the project evidence, the project results, into policy and market roadmap. And in the following slides, we will explore exactly how this bridge may work, how this white paper, which we have developed, will work. Next, please. So the objective of the white paper is to provide recommendations for policymakers and stakeholders to promote bio-based fertilizers and their acceptance by the end users. So it addresses why bio-based fertilizers aren't already mainstream if the circular economy is accepted, widely accepted. So we have studied the gaps and barriers the bio-based fertilizers are facing. We have collected updated information from published literature, European projects, and also the last available legislation, and the knowledge of various experts in the area. So once the main barriers of bio-based fertilizers are defined, the white paper proposes a roadmap with 2 different parts, recommendations and also opportunities. In this webinar, we will be presenting the recommendation, which is the main part. And these recommendations were validated not only by the project partners themselves, but also by experts in the environment and fertilization area. We believe that this white paper consolidates the WalNUT findings and offers actionable solutions for bio-based implementation. Next, please. So what would be these gaps and barriers that the bio-based fertilizers are facing? The white paper describes them in 2 different groups, by areas and by actors. From all the sources consulted, it is clear that the most significant barriers are associated with a lack of an European-wide legal definition, a fragmented governance, and also limited market access, and low awareness among farmers and end users. The actors would be the stakeholders affected by all these gaps. Also, all of this, of course, taking into account the mentioned Europe's external dependence on synthetic fertilizers and the associated environmental problems, greenhouse gas emissions, depletion of finite resources, and of course the impact of mining of the phosphate rock. But also we must consider another crucial point, which is that the European Union promotes higher fertilization efficiency and nutrient recovery from waste because it aims to reduce nutrient losses by 50% and fertilizers use by at least 20% by 2030, in line with the Green Deal and the Circular Economy Action Plan objectives. So, for all these reasons, it is time to focus our attention on bio-based fertilizers because from now on, everything will be around fertilization efficiency. Next, please. So we have described the challenge, the problems that bio-based fertilizers are facing. What would be the solutions? The solutions for this challenge are presented as recommendations. We will look at them in more detail later, but we will be presenting 7 recommendations. I will present you the first 4 to define and explain bio-based fertilizers and to promote them, which is a part more related to policy in the European Union. And the last 3 recommendations more related to the bio-based fertilizers benefits and agricultural productivity and the final users will be presented by our colleague from the Econs, Gabriela Cataneo. The white paper indeed divide by areas these recommendations, such as definition, characteristics, markets, and cost, and also by actors involved, technology providers, potential producers, research, policymakers, and of course, the farmers and final users, since they are all connected. And they have presented a specific structure. Next, please. I would like to point out this recommendation-specific structure. In the white paper, all the recommendations have the same appearance. They start identifying the problem. They present the key recommendation to solve it, how the key idea of the problem, how can be implemented the solution. Then what are the stakeholders involved or the actors involved, and finally propose the expected outcomes of this, the implementation of the recommendation of the interested parts, and finally propose a success indicator. For the ease of the presentation, the following slides will primarily focus on the detected problem and the core of the recommendation, which action can be taken. So with the basis such as this proposal in the WalNUT paper, we believe that policymakers can turn the current challenge into real solutions with bio-based fertilizers innovation and sovereignty in nutrient management and therefore in food security. Next, please. So
Thank you very
now
much.
we are going to present the recommendations to define, explain, and promote bio-based fertilizers. Next, please.
Thank you, Isabel. Maybe I can interrupt you for a second just to explain to our audience that now Isabel is going to present the first 4 recommendations of the white paper in the structure that she just showed you. You will see at the end of each recommendation a little poll that is going to pop up out of your screen. We thought of having this nice and fun feature in this webinar to collect a little bit your opinions on the relevance and the likelihood of the recommendations. So after each recommendation, a colleague in the background will launch a poll. You will see this pop up asking you for the relevance. You can vote from 1 to 5. And then there is going to be a second page. So click on next, and you can vote on the likelihood of the recommendation to be implemented. Then once you have voted, please remember to close the pop-up by clicking done or submit, depending on your language. And then we will proceed with the next recommendation. And at the end of the webinar, we will show you the results. And it's going to be just a snapshot, a picture, a very extemporary picture of what you guys think are the most relevant recommendations and the most likely to be implemented. Thank you very much. I'm going to change slide, and Isabel, back to you for the first recommendation.
Okay, thank you so much, Jasmine. Okay, the recommendation number 1, the first one, would be the official definition of bio-based fertilizers. The problem would be that there is no single recognized legal definition of bio-based fertilizers at a European level, and this leads to legislative confusion, uncertainty for manufacturers, and marketing obstacles. The new Fertilizers Product Regulation, the FPR, that has been in force since July 2020 and governs all the European fertilizers, do not include a specific bio-based fertilizer definition. It includes some component material categories that might be related with bio-based fertilizers, but that's all. So the key recommendation in this case, what to do, will be to include a consensus-based definition of bio-based fertilizers in the regulation, built especially in the outputs of the European research projects. In this line, the WalNUT project has proposed a technical definition about how it frames these BBFs. And these are fertilizers based on nutrient recovery and reuse technologies, excluding anaerobic digestion and composting. This means that would be technologies, physical, thermal, chemical, and biological technologies for recovering nutrients from already treated biomass to take waste more nutrient efficient. How can put this into practice? How can we create this official definition of bio-based fertilizers? We think that we need to draft a joint proposal for an official definition made by experts and, of course, the European Commission, and set timeline with the aim of entering into force by 2027. The key actors in this case will depend on the stage of the process. For example, for the proposal, we believe that it will be based on the results and the expertise of the European projects, such as the WalNUT sister projects, and also technical platforms, such as the European Sustainable Phosphorus Platform, and maybe fertilizers association or companies. For the next step, that would be acceptance and the regulation. There would be, of course, involved the European Commission, the Directorate of General Internal Market Industry, or for instance, the Directorate of General Agriculture and Rural Development. Later, it would be very interesting to consult the standardization departments, for instance, the European Committee for Standardization. And finally, the implementation will be finally adopted by the member states, industry, manufacturers, associations, and so on. In this case, the success indicator is easy. It would be to have a final official definition published in the regulation before the end of 2027, with effective implementation of in the member states by the end at least of 2028. So once we have defined the bio-based fertilizers, the next missing piece is the visibility, and to have visibility and trustworthy data to work with them, so stakeholders can get to know them and compare products, plan investments, and design their policies. So this will take us to the next recommendation. Yes, please don't forget to vote. Yes, now is the time to vote.
Thank you, Isabel. Tata, please, can you launch the poll? Here we go. In the first page, you can vote on the relevance of this recommendation according to your own expertise and competencies and knowledge of the sector. And then once you are done, please go to the second page and vote on the likelihood. Again, based on your competencies and knowledge of the sector. And then you can click submit. And done. I can see that most of the audience has voted, so now I have changed slides, hope is visible. Isabel, please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, yes. The recommendation number 2 would be the creation of an European Bio-Based Fertilisers Observatory. In this case, we have the problem that there is no European repository with up-to-date accessible information about bio-based fertilizers type, or their availability, or their composition, the prices, their agronomic characteristics or quality, and so on. So this leads to fragmented markets, mistrust, and weak policymaking. This also promotes the duplication of many studies and projects with lost or misplaced investments, and also wasted time by looking for information that should be already clear and accessible. So to fix this problem, the recommendation we propose is to establish an official European Bio-Based Fertilizers Observatory to centralize and disseminate rigorous data, for example, availability, quality, price, certifications, uses, impacts, agronomic impacts, and so on, as a single reference point. So the implementation approach will be to build a bio-based fertilizers module on the existing European infrastructure. For example, for instance, the European Fertilizers Observatory. So there is already an European Fertilizers Observatory, and also the Agri-Food Data Portal, the Market Observatory, the European Farm Book. There are already many platforms. So this will mean that integrating the European Bio-Based Fertilizers Observatory in one of these platforms will mean that we do not have to create something from scratch, which is more expensive and time consuming, but just to integrate in the what is already built for this purpose. So the integration in the existing platforms will reduce timeline of implementation and, of course, the costs that this could mean. The key actors in this case, we will need, of course, the support of the European Commission, the Directorate General of Agriculture and Rural Development, and maybe other directorates. Also, it would be interesting the integration of the CAP and the Horizon projects and the Circular Bio-Based Europe joint undertaking, which is already working as a research point. In this case, we consider that the success indicators would be the start of the creation of an operational BBFs module or Bio-Based Observatory in the European Fertilizers Observatory by 2028, aligned, of course, with the Bio-Based Fertilizers official definition acceptance. A real good success indicator will be at least 20% of the active producers registered within the first 2 years of operation of this observatory. We can vote. Yes.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for also stressing out that the white paper is not recommending to reinvent the wheel, but to working on existing platforms and existing knowledge base. Please do not be shy in voting. Do vote on extremes that says if you think that it's very unlikely or very, very likely that this can be implemented in the short or medium term, do vote on the lowest or highest scores so we can see what your opinion is. And then let's move to the third.
Thank you very much again. So once the bio-based fertilizers are visible and comparable, thanks to the observatory, we have still one of the biggest barriers, which is economic. Even a trusted product won't be adopted if the farmers cannot afford it. So the recommendation number 3 would be economic incentives for bio-based fertilizers. This is one of the most discussed issues in this topic, the bio-based fertilizers, as they are often seen as more expensive than synthetic fertilizers. However, during our research, we have seen that the cost may vary widely depending on the type of feedstock, the characteristics of the wastewaters, the stream flow, geography, scale, legal context, and so on. And since the bio-based fertilizers are not extracted but recovered, we believe that maybe Europe may need better techno-economic assessments rather than the conventional ones. And we believe that maybe it would be possible a revision of the techno-economic assessments for bio-based fertilizers. But in any case, fertilizers purchases can be a major farm cost, up to 12% of arable crops farmer input expenditures. So if prices of bio-based fertilizers are not offset, farmers won't adopt them, and then the circular transition won't be viable. This has been reported by many authors in many studies and in many projects. If bio-based prices must to come down at least by 30%, so that's an important number. And how can this be done? So in this case, we believe that it will be important to establish or enhance subsidies, carbon credit schemes, and tax incentives to promote bio-based fertilizers production and use. The white paper explores some ways, and actually there are precedents of this kind of strategies, like the strategy followed with the renewable energy transition in the European Union. So this is not new, it has been done before. And in this sense, it can be applied direct subsidies per ton of nutrients recovered or applied, for example. Also, they can be tax credits or tax reductions for manufacturers that can incorporate bio-based fertilizers as a percentage of their formula of the fertilizers they sell. They mentioned carbon credits, and of course, we believe the important priority in green public procurement for products meeting a minimum of bio-based fertilizers content. For example, I will give you an example. CAP support lines for bio-based fertilizers producers, define European certification criteria, set clear ratios. For example, would be possible to give 100 euros of support per ton of recovered phosphorus or nitrogen. Also, in the same line, green public procurement might require a minimum of bio-based fertilization share, for example, at 20%. So, if it is demanded a minimum amount of recovered products in every fertilizers, that will help to manufacturers include them in their formulas and ask for the subsidies and tax reductions, for instance. The key actors in this case will be the European Commission services, the Directorate of Agricultural and Rural Development, for example, other directorates such as Climate and Environment, of course, finance divisions, the Joint Research Center, the European Environmental Agency, of course, manufacturers, producers of synthetic fertilizers, which are already an important stakeholder, farmers, municipalities, and so on. The success indicator would be the integration of tax reduction into CAP subsidies plans by 2030. Of course, a 30% average reduction in the cost per kilogram of nutrient recovery by also 2030. And for instance, at least 10 million tons of CO2 equivalent credits linked to bio-based fertilizers, but it would be, for example, for 2035. So now you can vote if you want. Thank you very much. So we must think that if we subsidize without measuring that what we are rewarding, I mean, if we are giving money to something that we don't know if follows the correct circularity route, we risk funding just recycling, which is not really circular. So we believe that we need a way to prove circularity and prevent greenwashing in the case of bio-based fertilizers. So this is the intention of the recommendation 4, ensuring circularity of bio-based fertilizers. The problem in this case is that even with bio-based fertilizers presented as a circular model, the current model is still very linear. The nutrients are recovered, they are concentrated in a product and then transported long distance or medium, and then applied without contextualized agronomic control. So which is more or less the same idea as the synthetic fertilizers that are extracted, formulated, sold, applied, and then just in many cases without agronomic control. Since recycling nutrients is not necessarily the same as circularity, without assessment or monitoring, bio-based fertilizers may repeat the old linear system patterns. Also, another problem is that there are no standardized indicators to demonstrate functional or economic or ecological circularity for bio-based fertilizers. So what would be the recommendation in this case? To develop a standardized European system to assess and monitor bio-based fertilizer circularity based on the existing indicators and life cycle methodologies. What would this mean? So to be sure that the bio-based fertilizers are circular, we should measure traceability from the residue resource to the agronomic destination. Also, take into account the nutrient use efficiency, the associated emissions like ammonia, nitrous oxide, etc. The soil improvement, or at least the soil health maintenance, and also consider the other multiple perspectives such as technical, territorial, economic, study the potential verified circularity seal to to differentiate truly regenerative bio-based fertilizers with potential verified circularity seal, we probably will be avoiding greenwashing. So the implementation options to do that would be to use known frameworks, such as the life cycle assessment and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Material Circularity Indicator. So producers may use digital tools to generate circularity indices, integrate this into the proposed Bio-Based Fertilizers Observatory, so final users, farmers, can consult it and see in real time if they are looking for a circular product or not. It might be interesting also to use the label as a complementary for is the tax incentives or subsidies. The key actors in this case would be the European Commission, of course, the Directorate General of Agricultural and Rural Development, the Directorate of Methodology and Regulatory Development, maybe the Joint Research Center, and platforms and actors along all the value chain. So the success indicators proposed would be, for example, 70% of the bio-based fertilizers analyzed by circularity criteria by 2030, have at least 50% of the products with the circular verified label by 2035, and then these circular verified products able to get subsidies and tax incentives to promote the market acceptance. So the farm to fork strategy targets to reduce nutrient losses, as we have described before. So this is all about circularity and real solutions. Otherwise, we'll be keeping the linear model with the remain same problems and maybe the nutrient losses in the environment with no traceability. You can vote now. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. And now we are going to go for the next three recommendations, 5 to 7, with our colleague Gabriella Cattaneo. Thank you very much, Isabel, for presenting us the first 4 recommendations. And I think you can see that we really try to develop this white paper as Isabel said, a bridge from the operational and technical results of WalNUT, which is a 4-year project, very, very full of results from the pilot plants, to recommendations that could be used in policies and in practice. And again, looking at what is existing, looking at the knowledge and the structure that are out there already, and not reinventing or posing additional strains on the sector. Thank you very much, Isabel. And now we move to Gabriella with recommendation 5. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The next recommendations I'm going to present are focused on the best ways to highlight the potential benefits of adoption of bio-based fertilizers and ensure a self-sustaining path of deployment and take-up of these innovative products. What you heard from Isabel is that are the direct actions which are needed to kickstart the BBFs market, but these actions, while necessary, will probably not be enough to enable the social and economic acceptance of BBFs. So our next recommendations take a broader view of the stakeholder community and address the whole fertilizers ecosystem to promote the development of favorable systemic conditions for the successful uptake of this innovation. So recommendation number 5 is about the need for long-term agronomic validation of the impact of BBFs. But why is this important? When farmers select a product as important as a fertilizer, they must make economic decisions on its profitability and their economic survival in the short term, every season, every few months. But the microbial composition and the characteristics of the soil change very slowly. Technicians tell us that it takes 10 years or more to change the composition of 1 millimeter of humus in the soil. Therefore, the real impact of the wrong fertilizer is seen only after 10 years or more. Today, we already have growing proof that BBF can improve soil fertility, nutrient efficiency, and even guarantee the same or higher productivity than synthetic fertilizers. But this data comes from trials and pilots with a time horizon of 1 to 3 years at best, providing fragmented evidence, difficult to compare and aggregate, not easily communicated to the interested parties, the farmers, in a practical, visual, and easily applicable form. What we know is that synthetic fertilizer tend to deplete the quality of the soil in the long term, but the potentially best advantage of bio-based fertilizer. Sorry? Oh, yes. I think somebody forgot to close their microphone. Anyway, what we know is that the advantage of BBFs, that is their capacity to improve the quality of the soil in the long term, is still not unequivocally proven. This reduces the confidence of farmers, institutions, and public purchasers, and acts as a barrier against the widespread adoption of bio-based fertilizers into the technical and financial support system. So what should be done? According to our white paper, it is important to establish a coordinated system for long-term, full-scale agronomic validation. How? First of all, the European Commission DG Agri and DG RTD could allocate specific resources under Horizon Europe and the CAP for multi-year trials and projects of BBF's performance. The Commission, as well as research and farmer stakeholders, should promote the creation of a European network of living labs, demonstration pilots, to measure the performance of BBFs in diverse agricultural environments, but with common protocols. This would allow scientific comparison and aggregation of results. In addition, BBFs should be incorporated in major research programs as a key aspect of sustainable agriculture initiatives. The results of these initiatives for the scientific validation or the benefits of BBFs could also feed into common knowledge and information sources, such as the European BBF Observatory already proposed. Experience in agricultural innovation shows that local pilots and participatory research are the foundation for technology adoption and in the real world. So with this approach, the gap about the lack of long-term agronomic validation can be filled while creating a virtuous cycle of knowledge, user trust, and political legitimacy. Now you can vote on the relevance and likeliness of this recommendation, please. Next. Our next recommendation focuses on building trust and knowledge about BBFs, that we already said is a key aspect. Despite recent progress, according to WalNUT research and other surveys, there is a pervasive lack of awareness about bio-based fertilizers among the farming community, which prevents the integration of BBFs into mainstream agricultural practices. The supply of BBFs is still at a niche level. Only a minority of farmers have sufficient understanding of how they function. there is a need to build social acceptance in the stakeholder community. To do so, we recommend the development of a multi-tiered European program to promote awareness, build the technical capacity, and foster community engagement. These initiatives work at different levels because promoting awareness and understanding is not enough. You also need technical competencies. What should be done? First of all, general communication campaigns and outreach materials are needed to build awareness across the whole stakeholder community, something which will be greatly helped by the launch of the BBF Observatory, recommendation number 2, and should be a goal of each new BBF project or initiative. The next level is a strong push to strengthen technical training about BBFs. This could be done, for example, through integrated training modules about bio-based fertilizers in the agricultural advisory systems, such as the CAP and the national programs. The certification of BBFs related skills by farmers attending these courses could be leveraged, for example, as eligibility criteria for accessing subsidized or tax incentives. And this will help to promote the motivation for learning more about BBFs. Finally, it is important to foster community engagement, for example, by establishing peer learning networks in agricultural cooperatives and networks, and addressing user communities with tailored messaging and engagement initiatives. So this action should not be one-to-one, but focused on community and the audience groups and targets. Another important aspect, according to our research, is the local identity. We don't want to impose external or foreign models. This is not a top-down initiative. It should be this kind of initiatives to build motivation and communication are not limited to a niche audience, but aim at the whole stakeholder community and should be shaped in order to respect the local identity and local characteristics. A key target and impact indicator for this kind of initiative, for this recommendation, is that at least 60% of farmers surveyed should be familiar with BBF's properties within 2 years after the launch of this initiative. And you can see that if successful, this recommendation can lead to an increase of confidence in BBFs, thanks to greater user awareness and the higher number of technicians and advisors able to support highly productive fertilization plans, which again will feed into the circularity recommendation. Please vote. Shall I go?
Yes, please, Gabriela, go for the last one.
This is the last one, but perhaps the most challenging recommendation that we are suggesting. It addresses a structural barrier which fundamentally weakens the takeoff of the BBFs market. This barrier is the current fragmented status of the value chain for the production, distribution, and deployment of bio-based fertilizers, which is affected by siloed industries and unclear business models. For example, technology providers are focused on developing technology solutions, but do not take sufficiently into account the requirements of wastewater treatment plants. Wastewater treatment plants collect and process the sludge from which the BBFs must be extracted, but are not well coordinated with the requirements of BBFs producers, and so on and so forth. There is also a lack of new innovative specialized operators dedicated to BBFs, BBS factories, which could operate as a link between wastewater plants and fertilizer distributors. This situation is mostly due to the immaturity of the market. This is an innovative product, and only in the last few years has been surging in the agricultural environment. The lack of collaboration between the actors is a main problem. Intervention is needed to stimulate cooperation and accelerate the emergence of a stable and consolidated value chain. How to do so? Our recommendation is to develop a collaborative BBFs network comprised of regional platforms and coordinated by a central digital infrastructure. And the aim will be to strengthen connections across the whole value chain, aligning stakeholder interests, creating a stable cooperation framework, and this will foster innovation, scalability, and trust. The main suggested actions include, first of all, building bio-based fertilizer regional hubs as nodes of this collaborative network, providing the opportunity for different stakeholders to connect and collaborate with the support of professional facilitators. In parallel, we should promote multi-stakeholder regional digital platforms to facilitate dialogue, matchmaking, and joint ventures, and this could be complementary to and integrated with the European Observatory already suggested. Finally, an important aspect will be to fundraise, providing support to alliances of operators. This is an aspect which is not yet completely covered by the current BBFs initiatives. This could be done at the European level, for example, within Horizon or LIFE projects, at the national level with CAP support or with national program support, but also at local level by local actors, universities, research centers, local farmers associations. The development of such an interconnected network takes time, but all main stakeholders will have a vested interest to make it work, as a strong value chain is the backbone of any successful system. An important positive impact will be supporting the reshaping of the European fertilization model towards a more balanced, circular, and effective model. Now, this was the last recommendation suggested by the white paper. Before we vote, I just want to suggest, as we have remarked more than once, that there is a clear synergy between these suggested actions, which aim to deal with the main challenges preventing the successful development of BBFs and their acceptance. Building on the systemic analysis approach of the white paper, the recommendations are mutually supportive, and their potential cumulative impact is much greater than that of each individual action. This is why we hope that their relevance is recognized and acted upon by the key stakeholders. Please vote on the last recommendation.
Thank you, Gabriella, and thank you very much for also highlighting that the recommendations are interconnected and they look at different stakeholders in the sector. They look at markers, farmers, they look at practitioners, they look at the European level. I see we have all our responses, and thank you very much for being so active in replying to the polls. We are perfectly on time, even if we have a little bit more time to give some space to our guests. The white paper, as Isabel said at the beginning, was developed with a thorough literature review, but also including opinions from a lot of diverse experts in the sector, from practitioners, from researchers, and we have two of them here to represent the work that has been done. Welcome, Anna Maria and Benjamin. I'm very, very happy to have you here today. I will ask to introduce yourself at the beginning, Anna Maria first and then Benjamin, and then we can talk a little bit about your opinion, the relevance, the gaps and barriers that you can see in the uptake of BBFs in the sector. Anna Maria, please.
Well, first of all, hello to everyone. It is really a privilege to be with you here today and talk about this important segment and topic. My name is Anna Maria Spitznagel. I'm the director of EPS Consulting, and long story short, they say we are a Google Translate between the farmers, the technologists, and also the policy makers in order to understand better the economic environment in which we are introducing innovative technologies and agricultural innovations. So that's maybe enough for the start.
I love the definition you gave yourself. You are underselling yourself a little bit, but Google Translate, it's a very clear image for everyone.
Yes.
Benjamin, please.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, my name is Benjamin. I'm working in DG Agri, the unit dealing with research and innovation. And personally, my mainstream of work is on water, nutrients, and so this includes as well fertilizers and bio-based fertilizers.
Thank you very much. We feel very privileged to have you here today to discuss a little bit this important topic. So you have been working with us on giving your opinion on the recommendations and telling us what do you think are the key thematics to be prioritized or gaps and challenges in relation to the BBFs. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about it? Anna Maria, what do you think about this recommendation, and what do you think is important to prioritize at the moment in the state the sector is right now?
Yes, so maybe just as a brief intro, we have been working with the topic of bio-based fertilizers for the last, I would say, 10 to 11 years through different Horizon Erasmus Plus projects, but also working with the investment projects from farmers and technologists on a national level. So let's say that we are well informed on different aspects that investors are dealing with at this moment. And as you could see also through the Fertimanure projects, through the seed to land project and so on, there has been already quite a lot of elements that have been mentioned as a recommendation. It's very difficult to say that there is only one recommendation that needs to be prioritized at this moment because it's a very complex topic. But if we want to put it in a simple format, if we want to have something to be sold, we also need to be able to produce it and to engage all the necessary stakeholders to this topic. So from that point, I think it's very important to work on raising awareness, but on the other side also to making sure that the financial perspective for this new type of product is well established. It's always about, let's say, time and money, and from the time perspective, we need to take into account whether the stakeholders, all stakeholders involved, are at this moment aware of the products that there are, and also how much they would actually like to purchase it, to make really a decision to purchase it. We have a lot of technologies developed, and it's a continuous work that has been done over the last decades across Europe, but now it's about convincing, let's say, farmers and stakeholders to really use it. And for that, yeah, sometimes in the beginning, we also need, let's say, subsidy schemes or other elements that improve the market entry. So that would be, let's say, the focus from my point.
Thank you, Anna Maria. And this is very important. Recommendation 3, we were very much keen on trying to show that the farmers' willingness, but also possibility to purchase and to use and to be convinced of the performance of the BBFs was included there. And several colleagues colleagues did, while reviewing the recommendation, did point it out. So I think it's very important, and thank you for highlighting this. Benjamin, would you like to give us your perspective on the recommendation and anything that should be prioritized? Although, as Anna Maria said, it's very difficult to prioritize one as they are interlinked with one another.
Yes, for sure. Well, indeed, as mentioned already by Anna Maria, it's difficult to pick out one priority. It's almost impossible. And as also Gabriella said, it's also about the synergies of these recommendations that are mutually supportive, as she said. So also the EC is working on different streams that are similar a bit to some of the recommendations, at least. Just to introduce a little bit before I go to the basics of the recommendation or the questions. So you know that the changes, there were changes made to the fertilizing products regulation last year in the simplification omnibus, as they call it, of the chemicals legislation. So going into a direction of a more simpler, less administrative procedure. You know about, as you mentioned already in the recommendations, the fertilizer market observatory is there. It's an existing structure. And therefore, of course, it would be easier, let's say, to include or take up certain aspects of the bio-based fertilizers observatory, as you recommended here. The EU Farm Book was already mentioned, the EU CAP network, the Agri-Food Data Portal. So these are all, let's say, systems that can help, in fact, in the setting up of the bio-based fertilizer observatory. Another thing I would like to mention, as we talked about subsidies and costs, and linking it to the CAP. Just for you to know that Portugal, for example, they have set up already an eco scheme that exactly has the objective of replacing synthetic fertilizers by organic fertilizers, and they using either livestock effluents, products from forest biomass, or other organic fertilizers. So there is already the opportunity to include this kind of mechanisms within the CAP, but it's maybe important to raise awareness among the national authorities that when they are designing their CAP strategic plans, and also to raise awareness among farmers to take up already existing interventions. And also, I think the EU CAP network also could be an option to support the promotion and awareness activities, as they are quite important. But coming back to your question, as you know, with the new Commission, there is indeed an increased focus to improve competitiveness of the EU in general. So not only, let's say, the agricultural sector, but all sectors present in the EU. So I will focus a bit more on the possible economic incentives, because, you know, as mentioned in the white paper also, production costs are in general higher than synthetic fertilizers, but of course it also depends a little bit on the time frame. When Gabriella was presenting this long-term agronomic validation, the costs also depend on the time frame you see it, because bio-based fertilizers or synthetic fertilizers, they have different impact on, for example, soil health, and that's more like a long-term asset, linking it to nutrient efficiency, soil organic carbon. So it's not only just the pure production costs or the price that the farmer has to pay on the market. Maybe you know that in December last year, and that's a quite important thing, the EU the European Commission communicated or published a communication on the Resource EU Action Plan. I know that it looks more like, and it is in fact mainly dedicated to, let's say, a strategy on critical raw materials to adapt to, let's say, the current new reality we are facing or living in. But may not forget that within this paper, within the communication, the Commission also announced that they will propose in the second quarter of this year an action plan specifically to ensure, first of all, the availability, but also the affordability of domestic fertilizers. And then what is very interesting for this group of people is that it would include actions to enable recycled nutrients and other alternatives to fertilizer. So that's already foreseen in the second quarter of this year. So the Commission is not sitting in its chair only and looking at what's happening, but they would like to take action as well. Because decreasing the EU dependency on imported fertilizer, but also the cost of fertilizer for farmers is at the core of their concerns. Another thing is bringing, let's say, or further developing new technologies or bring them closer to the market. So you have both, let's say, deployment, upscaling of production of bio-based fertilizers. And there will also be not only these action plans, but it's foreseen that for research and innovation calls there will be specific calls dedicated to resource EU objectives, and that includes also bio-based fertilizers. That's it from my side.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you very much for reminding us once again that systems are there and then can be used and leveraged, and they can work synergically with each other. I personally didn't know that Portugal was already one step ahead in adopting bio-based fertilizer. And actually, I think something that we maybe didn't say enough today, but is very important, is that also national governments play a vital role in those schemes and in taking what comes from the European Commission, but can have an impact at the local level. We are sure that the European Commission is not just sitting in a chair, but thank you very much for telling us about the Resource EU Action Plan and this action for recycling. I think this is very, very relevant for this group. Thank you for telling us that. And we hope that with this white paper that reflects, in part, a 4-year-long project, we were able to talk and to address the right people and the right stakeholders with our recommendation, not only talking to us, technicians and practitioners, but to the policymakers with actionable recommendation and indicators that make sense than in real life. Isabel, I see your hands up, please.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, and thank you so much to Ana Maria and to Benjamin for being here in the presentation of the white paper. I found your observations very, very interesting, and we have taken notes for the upcoming main document, which is the deliverable of the task 6.2. Since the white paper is the annex just for dissemination and to contact with the people and get to the most people possible. If I'm not mistaken, Benjamin refers to the eco scheme of Portugal, where the fertilizers, the synthetic fertilizers are being substituted by organic fertilizers. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think this is a very important point because that's the thing. Not all the bio-based fertilizers are organic fertilizers, or might be a confusion about that. So this again takes us to the first recommendation, which was to have a final official definition And hopefully in the upcoming modifications of the legislation, we will have finally one, so we can establish exactly we are going to subsidize and support and make people to know better. So again, thank you. And I think there were all points very relevant. And as you said, all interconnected, the economic part, the dissemination part, and in the end, the need of a definition. Thanks.
Maybe just to add,
Benjamin, would you like to? Oh, Anna, go ahead.
if there is a possibility to add, I think it's very well mentioned that different countries maybe already have implemented to some extent some incentives, for example. Portugal was the case, but also, for example, in Croatia, we have the support for the introduction of manure as a fertilizer to the fields. So that's also going a bit, let's say, further in that direction of applying the organic fertilizers. However, I have a feeling that also on the national level, although they have a lot of possibilities and freedom, that maybe they are not fully acquainted with all the possibilities that there are, or maybe good practices in other countries. We have quite a good collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture in Croatia, and sometimes when I speak with people from the ministry, they also say, we are not sure whether we can do it or not, what is really feasible. So I think some kind of, let's say, a practical guidelines or some kind of, let's say, cross visits on this specific topic is something that would certainly encourage on a national level authorities to go in these kind of directions. So that's maybe just, let's say, an observation considering the experience that we have so far in the last 10 years.
Thank you, Anna Maria. We did see and the need for increasing awareness and with capacity building programs with other initiatives, and that's why we include recommendation 6 exactly on that, because sometimes what we see is, as you said, a lack of comprehensive knowledge of what can be done and what can be implemented. Benjamin, would you like also to react on Isabel's observation?
Well, not directly, but it's clear that yeah, we need to see everything in synergy, and there are many things that need to go together. And yeah, coming back to the observation of Anna Maria, so the national authorities, apparently there is indeed a need to raise awareness and make them more knowledgeable about the possibilities that are available, let's say, within the CAP network, CAP framework, within their CAP strategic plans. There are possibilities, but sometimes it's also a question of prioritizing in this case, also budget-wise, because it costs some money, and you need to see the positive and negative points of it. But for sure, that's yeah, a way that needs to be further looked at.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask something or to give a reflection in this moment? I'm happy to give space to anyone who wants to reflect on any of the points that we have been mentioning so far. While I give you time to think, maybe I would like to dig a little bit on the second question that we prepared for you. We already said that incentives are extremely important, and awareness at the national level is also currently a gap that should be looked at. and for which programs should be crafted. But in your opinion and in your field of work, Anna Maria and then Benjamin, do you see other gaps or areas in the sector that should be improved or that could use further inputs from practitioners from those projects that we are all working on? Please tell us your opinion.
Well, we talked a lot about, let's say, trying to implement the subsidy scheme in the beginning, but in the long run, I think we also need to make sure that the market competitiveness is made or is prepared, or the good business model is developed regardless of the subsidy schemes. If we really want to make sure that these products are not here just during the subsidy period. On the other side, it's also, I think, very important that we are continuously building the trust from stakeholders, specifically farmers, on the, let's say, the positive effects of bio-based fertilizers and that it has on the long run on the soil quality. So from that point, when we are talking with farmers, it's always about, let's say, seeing the situation in the field and trying to understand how it really works in reality, what are the real benefits. And that's something that takes a long time. You know, it's not one season that farmer wants to see and now he's ready to implement it. It's a longer period of time. So those two things have to go in parallel if we really want to make this work in future. And what I could see is also, it's not specifically the answer to your question, but I could see the shift between, for example, mineral fertilizer companies 5 years ago and now compared to the topic itself. And we could see that they are also not feeling endangered by bio-based fertilizers, but they're also investigating how this could be an additional type of products that they can offer, or how this could be good for them. So from that point, I think a lot of gaps are also being closed, but still there is a lot of things that needs to be done.
Thank you. Benjamin?
Okay. So first of all, yeah, the white paper that you presented and the recommendations, I find them very, very comprehensive, well documented with many references where you can look at for further details. So for sure, I will forward this white paper to some relevant people that are working on this topic, apart from me. So within these recommendations, well, since it's so comprehensive, I couldn't find many gaps or areas that should be further developed within this white paper. But there was maybe one, I would say, minor thing that came to my mind, because it links a bit to the agronomic validation of bio-based fertilizers. That's in fact and which I couldn't find directly into this white paper, but I know that other Horizon Europe research projects are also working on that, which is on the combination of bio-based fertilizers and synthetic fertilizers, and the agronomic impacts, and also in terms of costs, because costs are important for farmers, whatever way you turn it. So this is something, as you know, for many bio-based fertilizers, the nutrient content is, I would say, relatively low. I don't want to generalize, but or say it's for all of them, there are some exceptions. But the looking at combinations of bio-based fertilizers with synthetic fertilizers, we can maybe try to combine the best of both, because bio-based fertilizers certainly has some clear advantages compared to a synthetic fertilizer. especially in the area of soil health and emissions. On the other hand, we may not forget, and that's the second, not really a gap, but something we need to keep in mind, because the synthetic fertilizer world is also changing and advancing. First of all, you have big companies, fertilizer companies, the classical fertilizer companies that are also going in the bio-based fertilizers. Take the example of Yara, for example. And you see as well the development, although it's still at a very early stage, is on green ammonia, which will be or which can be used or to produce green fertilizers, purely synthetic, so not the advantages of or all of them of bio-based fertilizers, but this might come also on the market. So I think we also need to take that into account.
Thank you very much. I think you touch a pain point here on the combination of bio-based and synthetic fertilizers. Isabel, see your hands up again.
Yes, thank you both again for your valuable inputs in this regards. I also find them very interesting and very useful, and of course we will get into that. Regarding what Benjamin just said about the complementarity of bio-based fertilizers and synthetic fertilizers, I believe that this is a very interesting point. And there is also a comment in the chat of one of our colleagues that said that bio-based fertilizers should not develop in detriment of the agronomic use of organic fertilizers. So in this line, as Ana Maria also said, the bio-based fertilizer should be another option for the farmers, and that can be used fully in the crops, also in combination with synthetic fertilizers or organic fertilizers. That's for the farmers to decide which is the best option for them. But it's important, of course, to remember that we need to recover these nutrients from the waste. So this could be the best way to do it, is to offer this another option to the farmers, which are in the end the ones who decide. And that was just the comment. That's the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel.
Sorry if I can add. So yeah. We are talking a lot about, I really like what you summarize now, Isabel, but it's also going in the direction that there should be very clear and open communication, and not just at certain points in the project's development or process development, but also throughout the whole process. Because we could often see, I told you about the Google Translate part, but what we could also see in different projects, we are developing as researchers something, and then a farmer already is implementing something that's way better, but it's very practical solution, you know, because he had a concrete problem. Or on the other side, there are already subsidies that are available, and maybe we are searching for them as a researchers because it's not our core competence. So from that point, I think it's very, very important to have continuous communication and very open communication without being afraid to ask questions, even it might look as a very simple or stupid questions, but just to better understand the topic. And one of the last recommendations that you mentioned in the white paper was about the collaborative framework, if I'm not mistaken. So from that point, to really establish the collaborative BBFs network. So from that point, I think it's something that should be established and then be implemented across the different projects, across the different initiatives, and that it's a unique point where all these stakeholders can find themselves as a safe spot, you know, to say what is really troubling them.
Thank you very much. Isabel, I know you would like to discuss with them all day long, but in the interest of time, and I'm aware of everyone's lunchtime as well, if you don't mind, you can type it in the chat, and I will go quickly to the next slide, where we prepare the results of the poll. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today and for giving us your opinions on the recommendation and for being so keen on participating. We see from the results of the poll that recommendation 2 on the observatory and recommendation 6 on the attention that has to be given to capacity building, awareness, and increasing trust are the more you think are the more likely to be implemented. But at the same time, when we look at the relevance,
sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I need to interrupt you just a second. You
Go
have
ahead,
to what? You have to update this slide because it's not the right.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the
Let
right
me see if I'm a bit.
Sorry.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So here we are. Okay. So okay, let's discuss them again. I see the most relevant recommendation for you is recommendation 3 on the incentives and the ability of farmers to be able to uptake and to buy and to use BBFs. And slightly behind, but still important, is recommendation 6 on the awareness, trust, and capacity building that is needed to uptake BBFs. And I can see that while for recommendation 6, there is also high likelihood for what you think of that to be implemented. The other one that is very likely to be implemented and is also very important is recommendation 1 on the definition of a common definition of BBFs that is missing and is our first recommendation. What else can we see? I see that recommendation 4 is the less relevant compared to the others, but as well can be is a bit higher in the likelihood to be implemented when we are talking about ensuring circularity in the sector. And the least likely to be implemented for what you think is an important one, and the one we have discussed also with our panelists, the likelihood to have implemented the incentives for the farmers. So we see that there is a discrepancy for what we think it's very relevant and important in the sector, but how difficult is it to put in practice? Thank you very much. We are going 2 minutes late, but I just want to take 1 minute to thank you all for participating. Thank you very much, our main author of the white paper, Isabel, as well as all the colleagues that discussed with us during the past months and help us write and craft the recommendation through a series of reviews. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, John and Caterina, my colleagues, who helped put together this webinar. And many, many thanks to Benjamin and Anna Maria for giving us your time and your very relevant opinions and perspective on what BBFs are in the sector, what is important, and what can be done in order to increase, well, strengthen their uptake for practitioners and technicians. Thank you very much. I see Sarah's asking if there is a link to the white paper, and thank you for your question. Is now in the final reviews, is being finalized as we speak, and we will send all the participants a summary of the meeting and information on where you will find a downloadable version of the white paper as soon as is finalized. Anyone else who would like to give a last remark? Otherwise, it's me just to thank you again. It has been very informative and very pleasant to discuss with you all, and hope to see you in the next project. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you very
Good
much,
lunch.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.